Lately, the Koch brothers just can't stop making the case for the left. A couple of weeks ago, as we reported at the time, they funded a study of Medicare for all, the likely costs of it, what would it actually cost to do. And obviously they went into that with a particular goal in mind. But unfortunately, it turned out that they discovered that it looked like it would actually save trillions of dollars over our current system, while at the same time providing better healthcare to more people. And now we come to this week where they're just covering all the rest of the ground, basically. They have this new group that they set up, I believe less than a year ago, called In Pursuit Of, which is mildly threatening.
Yeah.
I don't entirely know what that's about. But they polled Americans about a number of different issues. And going into it, obviously the Koch brothers are hoping to show that Americans are, like staunch capitalists and they support certain libertarian principles. To give an idea of one example of that, one of the things the survey found was that 86% of Americans said the right to personal property is key to a free and just society. Can you ask a question that more people are just going to answer yes to without really thinking about it? That means virtually nothing.
No, it means that 14% of America might be communist.
That's true, yeah,
maybe.
The news is that anyone doesn't support that, right?
Right,
Yeah.
So there's 14% of Americans that are either opposed to or not sure that we should have personal property? That is interesting.
That's
news.
pretty cool.
Okay, I'm not sure I agree, but okay, I didn't know that the country had that big a percentage of super left wing.
I do. Property is theft.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
So that's one of the very top level sort of like libertarian capitalist things that they were polling about. But they also polled about a lot of particular policies as well. And that's where they might not have gotten exactly the result that they wanted. I guess to their credit, they still released the information as they did with their Medicare for All study a couple of weeks ago. So let's talk about some of the other findings from this Koch-funded study. Poll found that 66% of Americans would find, quote, government-paid college tuition as either a very effective or somewhat effective solution to social barriers, and fully half of all Americans said it would be very effective.
Oops.
I did it again, said the Koch brothers.
So I'm waiting for the Associated Press to write a story about, no, they didn't.
Yeah.
Right, so when the Koch brothers had this study about Medicare for all, and it turns out, they're like, it costs $32.6 trillion, which is actually less than what healthcare costs today. In fact, according to that their own study, if Medicare paid the doctors and the hospitals what they pay now, so they actually did Medicare, we would save $2 trillion. The Associated Press had to go do damage control for the Koch brothers by saying, well, I mean, but Bernie Sanders pointing that out, it's not fair. Not fair how? And then they had to do a fact check after we sent them videos showing how wrong they were, and the fact check said, yeah, that's what the study says, but we still don't like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Right.
So I can't wait for the Associated Press to fact check this and go, even though 2/3 of the country says they would like government-funded public education, we're gonna pretend they said otherwise.
Right.
Associated Press, you're up.
People like private property, remember that? Yeah, let's go back to the private property stuff. I think the Koch brothers are just doing this to like make sure they're not in touch with the American people. They're just like, oh cool, let's keep running things. Got it, like let's keep moving the opposite way of where everyone says we should be going.
Yeah, maybe they were like, are we sure we're on the wrong side of things?
Are
Let's
we
just
evil
double check.
enough? Yeah.
All right, what else are they on the wrong side?
Okay, well here's a big one. You might have heard of this in a number of different primary elections in the cycle that we're in. A $15 minimum wage was almost as popular, with 35% saying it would be a very effective solution, 30% saying it would be a somewhat effective solution. So again, a big chunk higher than a majority of the country saying not just a minimum wage or a good minimum wage, but a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Wait, but isn't that something like only straight white Bernie bros like, and like no one else likes that, and to support stuff like that you have to be a misogynist, racist, homophobe?
Yeah,
Yes.
probably, but it turns out 65% of the country are apparently Bernie bros.
Yeah.
So do people want higher wages? Of course they do. The fact that that's surprising is amazing. But people in Washington and New York and the power centers have convinced themselves, no, people do not want higher wages. The Koch brothers are right. Koch brothers, by the way, actually not only fight against higher wages and higher minimum wage all across the country, they lobby against it, they spend money to do it. They'd probably just pay less money if they just paid higher minimum wage than spending all that money on lobbies.
Right, it's true.
Which actually, of course, they've done the math on it.
I mean, this is,
but not only that, they at times have argued there should be no minimum wage at all. Okay, so this is exactly counter to their things, but they do the study and they're like, ah, damn it, here we go again. It turns out the American people are totally opposed to our philosophy.
But that's that's actually that gets into why I think it's at least somewhat surprising because of the power of propaganda in this country and how workers have been beaten down decade after decade after decade. We had the head of Missouri's AFL-CIO on the Damage Report this morning to talk about Proposition A being taken down, and he talked about this campaign that's been ongoing for a half century or so to convince workers that unions are their enemies.
Right.
And the thing is, so the Koch brothers, everything you said about them is true. But a lot of Republican politicians say the exact same thing. They advocate for lower or no minimum wage. Donald Trump twice in debate said that wages are too high. And these politicians keep getting reelected. Didn't seem to hurt Donald Trump. I didn't see it in a lot of ads or anything like that. And so I would not be surprised if more people had bought into some of the propaganda about minimum wage.
I mean, I think two things. One, the numbers on this are the least generous, right? Like, I mean, they're trying to do everything they can to make sure this is as small as possible. And two, it's still breaking through. It's still, you see the majority of people do support some universal health care, minimum wage, yes, assistance with attending college, an affordable college tuition. Despite all the propaganda, despite all the state policy network, which is like an anti-union, union busting, despite all the money that is, the American Legislative Exchange Council that funnels legislation to all different states to roll back workers' rights, that the Koch brothers finance, despite all that, this is peeking through the cracks, which means I want another study. We should cross-study this because I bet the numbers are even more staggering.
I actually am thankful to the Kochs that they did this study because this doesn't. It's not incongruous with any other poll that's ever been done. Medicare for All polls incredibly well. So do all of these positions, including $15 minimum wage, et cetera.
They're not radical, despite the propaganda.
The mainstream media doesn't pay attention to those polls. They immediately ignore them. This might actually get their attention because they're like, oh, these are our friends, the Koch brothers, that funded this. And besides that, beyond just tweaking the mainstream media, but it is a little bit of man bites dog, right? So they're like, oh, whoa, that's a Koch study, and but it shows the Kochs are wrong, so that might get their attention. Maybe. And the reality is these are massively popular positions in every single poll, but yet when you turn on cable news, you hear the exact opposite as if it's true. And so there is a little bit of truth in the whole, the fact that the mainstream media is not representative of the American people.
And I will say that having worked in news and a lot of friends who are journalists, that they go out of their way when they see a study that is positive in terms of Medicare for all, that positive in terms of minimum wage, and they go out of their way to find the opposite. So you will go and you'll get your Heritage Foundation study. You'll go and all these other right-wing think tanks in order to sort of create some sort of balance. The cover is blown. I mean, it's 2018 and people, we're more unequal than we were during the roaring 20s, right before the Great Depression. And it's like, can we stop pretending that there's any kind of balance? That there's we gotta get our right-wing studies in. No, stop it.
But that's an assault on the truth in favor of neutrality.
Right.
And so
pseudo-neutrality.
No, it's real neutrality, but it's not objectivity, right? Neutrality is 70% of Americans think that Wall Street should be regulated. That's objectively, this poll shows, and almost every poll shows, in this case, is 69% of Americans say they want Wall Street to be tightly regulated. Neutrality says some want Wall Street to be regulated and some don't. Wait a minute, you're calling it even when it's not even. It's 7-3. Call it what it actually is. But they do go out of their way to do that because they're cowed by Republicans who constantly attack them. So they help right-wing framing by pretending things are neutral when they are not. The American people are not unclear. So 70% of them say, God damn it, regulate Wall Street. 71% of them, according to this Koch-funded study, and again, almost every poll, say we want guaranteed childcare. You say that on cable news, I guarantee you will be attacked. They'll say, oh, radical. I say, well, how are we gonna afford it? It's not practical. That seems like a radical position. Are 70% of Americans radical?
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that these kinds of polls matter? I mean, sure, they matter to people like us who care, and we believe in that democracy should ultimately work. But when it comes to, do we have to make the economic argument, which I know we have, the Koch brothers sponsored other data that showed that it was more affordable to have Medicare for all than the current system we have.
There's a moral framing and then there's a pragmatic framing. But I think why this is so useful is that it shows that when people try to hide behind pragmatism and pretend, the Kochs don't do this, but I mean, liberals do this all the time. They pretend, it's not that we're opposed to single payer, Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage. It's just that they're not viable. Sure. They're not doable because America isn't ready yet. Good luck passing that in, anywhere outside of the coasts. And now we know that that's not true, right? I mean, you can,
that
of course,
support.
That it does have support, and it's not a radical idea. And so when people say the opposite, we know that they are actually ideologically committed to stopping something like single payer, or they're uninformed.
Yeah. By the way, can we just mention, because we've talked around this just a little bit, but inside of this study as well, of sort of bearing the lead, I guess, 55% said a government-run healthcare system would be a very or somewhat effective policy response.
So, and 92% said that they are having problems with the cost of healthcare, which is unsurprising. I want to focus on that a little bit. But look at the framing. To Francesca's point earlier, government-run healthcare is a way of framing it so you get a negative response instead of Medicare, which is popular, Medicare for all. Okay, so they frame it in what they think is going to get the most negative response. Is still a solid 55%.
So it's higher than that.
Yeah, no,
it must be higher than that.
Yeah, give me government-run healthcare. Give me government-guaranteed childcare. Give me government-funded public education. The answer is yes. How many times do I have to say yes? And when you do say yes, again, here's what they will say on cable news. Well, I mean, of course, the American, if they're caught and they're faced with actual facts they cannot deny, although they almost never get caught because they almost never let progressives on air. So they're never in a situation where they're confronted by the fact that they are basically, look, I don't think that they're doing it with intent or with malice, but they are in essence lying to the American people when they say that people don't want it, when they clearly do want it. And if you shove the poll in their face on the air, which again, almost never happens. So if you do that, they go, well, I mean, yeah, they might want it, but they don't really know how much it costs. Wait a minute though, you never said that about the wars. And you never said that about the tax cuts. Did you
barely say that about the current healthcare system?
Yeah. Right, that's the other issue, right? So this, which you brought up, Francesca, which is, regardless kind of this polling, we all know, and Ocasio-Cortez brought this up the other day to Chris Cuomo, which is that we all know no one ever asks people where they're gonna find the money to fund a war. No one's gonna ever ask people where they're gonna find the money to offer the rich a tax cut. It's only when there are things that actually help most people that we're supposed to scratch our heads and scramble and figure out where we're gonna find the money for it.
Could you imagine after 9/11, and I mean, in that case, it's incredibly egregious because we went to war with the wrong country. But if, when the Republicans said, hey, we need to go to war because of 9/11, at a bare minimum, what the reporter should have said is, well, Iraq didn't attack us, but they didn't even say that. But getting beyond that, could you imagine if they had said, well, you say the American people want war, but do they know how much it costs? That's not very practical.
Right.
Could you imagine? They would never dare say that. But when it's something that helps your family, they say it immediately. It's almost as if they have an establishment bias.
A war that is still not over, by the way, the one that was started after 9/11. I also, I think that what bothers me about this also is that the left is always called ideological, right? And that I think that was sort of the takeaway from this week's election was that when sort of progressive insurgents did not win, it was like, well, we see that Democrats are not motivated by ideology. It's like, I'm sorry, what of all this, which are part of the planks of these progressive Dems, what of this is ideological? There's nothing ideological.
There's nothing fringe or radical about it. It's fairly mainstream. And when people on the left, progressives, insurgents, socialists, whatever, the people who run the gamut, when they win, it's a fluke. When they lose, it's because their ideas just aren't popular. So the framing is very convenient.
The press is a massive establishment bias. So I mean,
which they, guess what, guys? They don't admit. So if you raise that, they're like, but I'm not establishment. Oh, okay, thanks for clearing that up. We thought you were one of those self-identifying establishment outlets.
So to Francesca's point, when somebody on the left argues for a position, they go, oh, that's so ideological, as if it's like an insult, right? Whereas if a conservative does it, they're like, that's principled. See, he's fighting on principle, whereas the left is just being ideological and hence not practical.
Pie in the sky.
Right? So, and I want to just say, I've now interviewed, I think, hundreds of candidates across the country on Rebel Headquarters, another show that we have. And what they say is, overwhelmingly, the three issues that everyone is bringing up, by the way, Democrat, Republican, or Independent, is one is healthcare is killing us. We're in constant stress over, am I gonna have insurance? Am I gonna be able to pay for it? Am I gonna get bankrupt, et cetera? There is healthcare is destroying our health, okay? The state, like people again on TV have no idea how bad it is right now in the country. You knock on people's doors, that's the first thing they say. Secondly is wages, for God's sake, wages. Third thing, which is actually a little bit surprising to me, not college for all, which I advocate for, but student loan debt, crushing. Yeah. It's an albatross around the neck of the whole country. So these are the issues that actual Americans care about, and how often are they talked about on television? Almost never, and if you dare do it, they call you a radical. Go knock on any American's door and see if they're radical. Look at any polling, see if they're radical. Yeah. Who's the radical one if 70% of Americans are on our side? 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.